Welcome to the 20... Oh, whoops. Sound check. Test, test. Welcome to the 26th day of December 2021. This is the Good Life Meditation. I'm Kurt, and these are my principles and values, my objectives and principles, which collectively, I guess, are my values, which I use in managing my life. I talk about this every day. In the past, I always did this personally, but since moving to this new home and with this nice little seating arrangement here, I've decided to do this in front of the camera, which is very helpful. Doing this in a more deliberated manner helps to make these ideas more substantial in my mind. And I've got the two dogs right next to me. How nice. First, I reflect on yesterday and last night before doing my good life meditation, and then I'll talk about the coming day. Yesterday was Christmas, and I kind of felt a little bit lost yesterday. I'm the kind of person that really needs work to help give me some filler in the day. And Yumiko and I didn't really have a plan. Yesterday, our default thing was just to... Yumiko had said that breakfast was at 8 o'clock. So there was that. And before that, we did gift opening, and which was all nice. Yumiko really made a really nice breakfast. After all that, Emily took off. She had gifts to exchange with her friends down in Orange County, and then we went in and cleaned the house. I did my chores. Yumiko and I had a nice lunch. I interspersed something that's called relaxation. I tried to do that through the morning. I started reading one book, which turned out I didn't like, so I put it aside. It was fiction, which I'm not good with fiction. I prefer my books have some the meat of reality on them, so I put that aside and started up with another book. I started reading William Langland's Piers Plowman, written in the 14th century. Interesting for the glimpse it provides. It actually was an epic poem, but it's interesting for the glimpse it provides of medieval life, what it was really like. In fact, the part that I'm reading, I've just started, so I'm just right there. He was already talking about what it was like to deal with the Catholic authorities who were selling indulgences. Now, of course, we all know what it's like. Indulgences, of course, being the Catholic instrument in the Middle Ages that you could purchase. Purchase a sin. I don't know if you could purchase it ahead of time. I think you could. So if you wanted to have a night of debauchery, you could buy an indulgence and use that as your get out of jail free card. This is one of the things that eventually led, I believe, to Martin Luther, pinning his objections to the church door, and the split from Catholicism. But it's interesting, actually, have him reading and writing and describing what that was like. This was fiction, of course. This was fiction as well, but it was fiction. I guess there's something in that. It was fiction reflecting the reality of the time. So I guess fiction has that to it, right? Interesting. I hadn't realized that until now. So anyway, then, and by the way, Yumiko made just a fantastic dinner the night before. Our Christmas Eve dinner was to die for. Wow. And then we had the leftovers of that on yesterday for lunch. So after relaxing a little bit, cleaning the house, doing Christmas, cleaning the house, relaxing, we had a great lunch. Then a little more relaxing. And then Yumiko and I took the dogs for a very nice short hike up into the hills behind our house, raining off and on all day. And then after that was all done, I decided to go on a solo hike to the top of the mountain, which I did, which is just a blast. I could see big, columns of rain, coming at me. I got out the little Doppler radar on the phone, and I could see them on the radar and hold it here, and I could see it in the distance, and how accurately it matched the landscape. So here's my picture for today. It's not the Anchorhold. This is for the uphill climb, which life is. And there I am, poorly drawn, with a backpack and a hat, steadily climbing up the trail to the mountain with two, not really shafts of rain, but, walls of showers coming at me. And the thrill of thinking if I'm going to make it back in time. It was a lot of fun. I've got this one sticker that I give out to when people, if I've got it, when people buy the copies of Going Alone. And it says, always go to the desert, which I put on my motorcycle to remind me to always go to the desert, which I don't do anymore. That's a problem. I really should follow my own, heed my own recommendation. So now let's do the good life, which is a set of 7 objectives and 30 principles outlined in my book, Going Alone. This book is available on Amazon. Or if you'd like a signed copy, you can go to my website, goingalone.org, and there's the purchase section there, and you can buy any of my books there, and I will sign it and send it to you. Let's do this. Objective number 1 is to be in a state of life, a condition where if I die right now, it causes the least. I can plop through the surface like a diver with really good form, just without very little splash. Plop through to oblivion. So the principle is called to be always ready to die. And that means that I have my relationships in order, I have my affairs in order, and I have my art in order. And I think I do. As they're not as perfect as they could be. The last book remains largely unedited. The Good Life, that is. I'm not proud of the state that it's in right now. I wish I could have a better relationship with my mom, and I wish I would leave my family with more. But these are all works in progress. The next principle is to make good and effective use of time, to not squander my moments. Although more and more, and I used to say, no, there's no time for reruns. I'm changing my mind on that a little more since I added this new principle at the very end, principle number 30, which is the principle of fun. If someone enjoys a rerun, so be it, right? I mean, if someone enjoys just sitting on the sofa or not doing much of anything, then I guess that meets that one principle, right? I mean, who am I to say what constitutes what should or should not? In fact, I'm probably a little bit jealous. I wish I could enjoy a rerun like that. Wow, new perspective. I'm grateful for that. I'll have to think more about that. Why am I so busy doing things that I consider meaningful? Maybe it's because I don't want to pass into oblivion. That might be it. Maybe it's because I believe there is no life after death. So I guess if you believe that there was life after death, you could carry on the party afterwards, but I don't think so. So I'm in a hurry to make something of this life while I'm here. The next principle is that of the development and maintenance of good and sound life principles, which are these 7 and 30 that I'm relating right now. And I work hard at this. Not just adding new principles, but retooling existing principles. Next is the cultivation of good emotional reactions. To try to react well to circumstances throughout the day. I had that yesterday a little bit. Like I said, I don't do well without a plan. And yesterday was a little more free form. It's funny, I'm okay without a plan when I'm in the wilderness, but what in the world was that? Yeah. Yeah. Rudy, it's okay. But that's the thing about living in a house versus the apartment. If you hear a sound, it's coming from here. It sounded like a bobcat cat hissing. Thank you, Rudy. So where was I? Oh, the cultivate. Now I know what that is. That's the boiler on the coffee pot. But the other sound came from over here, that's outside. But it was right outside. I've been watching too much Alone. You know, that sound that they have. That was a strange sound too, huh? Oh well. So, the cultivation of good emotional reactions. So like I said, yesterday was a little more freeform than I like. As a result, I was a little anxious about it, but I did good. I maintained myself. And I did talk to my mom, and it was weird. And I didn't let her pull me into that weirdness, which I think is her hobby. When the phone rang and I actually saw it was from my mom, I actually took, before I hit the answer button, I actually braced myself and I said, "Okay, Kurt, you're going to maintain a neutral posture in whatever she says, just a neutral posture." She likes to. The image comes to mind is the sirens and Odysseus, you know, the sirens singing from the rocks, leading the sailors to turn their vessels into the rocks and destruction. It's kind of what it's like with mom, luring you in. I didn't stop my ears, but I did lash myself to the mast. And I sailed successfully through. The next objective is the performance of good actions, just doing good things, followed by the recognition of true limits and true opportunities. Next is one thing slowly, just doing one thing at a time and doing that thing slowly. So those are my 7 objectives. Next are my 30 principles. The first of these is the principle of war, to always be fighting propositions of truth, namely my own. So to be at war with these 7 and 30. Also to be at war with the propositions of truth that others make. Next is reason, the principle of reason, and the sub-principles of honesty, objectivity, and doubt. I want to be a reasonable man, using honesty as, no, valuing honesty and maintaining objectivity and being skeptical, duly skeptical, to put it more accurately. Exercising due skepticism. Next is the homunculus, the concept that there's a little mortal that lives inside my head who is doomed to die with me. And that little mortal lives upon a structure that I call the Anchorhold, which is a little rock. Picture a little rock sticking out of the sea, where the water splash and the tide rises and falls. And when the tide's high and the water splashing, that's when life is rough. That's when the Anchorhold gets slippery and the waters are close. And it takes some effort to still the mind, to quiet the mind, and to press on. The next principle is the home of good and evil. The idea of a someplace just above the head of the homunculus where you can write down objectives and principles in chalk, or chalk-like substance, daily substance that can wipe away when you make a mistake, or that blows away in the wind if you don't tend to it. Suggestive that our values are subjective, not everlasting. Pardon me. So many sounds from me. Next is the principle of purpose. My life has three purposes, if you will. Biology, to be a family, create a new life, my daughter, and also to take care of my little dogs that didn't have a home. So biology, helping to foster a new life. Virtue, to live a virtuous life, where virtue is defined as the objective improvement of the well-being of thinking creatures, and where well-being is defined as the improvement of general welfare, happiness, and peace. And then finally, mission is part of that. Whatever mission I choose in life. And my mission right now is doing exactly what I'm doing right now. My good life. Proposing the good life and sharing the good life. Because from a secular perspective, it works. Since I don't have a religion or a God to turn to, I need something else to be the values in my life. And that's what the good life is. It is that structure. After purpose comes the principle of the atomic principle. The idea that everything is bits and pieces, including you and me, atoms and molecules, and very soon will die and dissolve away again. Our consciousness being nothing more than an artifact, a consequence of that biology, of that living biology, living substance. What's the word? Emergent property of it. Just as like if you put enough molecules of water together, at one point those molecules of water take on the property of being wet. Somehow if you put enough biological life together, some cells together, I don't know how it works, but life or consciousness seems to emerge from that. The next principle is the principle of nature. Everything has some particular nature, and it's useful to recognize that and remember that when dealing with people, things, places, events, circumstances of every sort. Next is the pirate ride, the tentatively accepted proposition that free will is an illusion. I can't prove that, but I suspect that's the truth. I operate as though that's the case. And I'm open to being convinced otherwise, as I am with all my objectives and principles. I call it the pirate ride because I'm reminded of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, where they're animatronics. The pirates are moving around, like kind of lifelike. It's evident to us that they're not really alive, but it does the job to a degree. I believe we're the same thing. We're just far more convincing that the motions that I'm making right now, every decision that I'm choosing, is not my own. It is the consequence of all of the events that have occurred before me since the Big Bang, throughout time, leading like a series of domino falls to this moment. There's that sound again. What the hell is that? Next principle is the principle of maturity and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude. Maturity is something that arises out of experience and is activated into our lives when we have the fortitude to not repeat those mistakes and to repeat and to do again the things that work. That's maturity. Next is after maturity is the social principle. We're social animals. We need each other. And our life is better when we live with and for one another. Followed by the public speaking is the principle of public speaking. The suggestion of communicating using few words and carefully chosen words and deliberate words. Now I'm being rote. And to not gossip. Public speaking is just all about being in control of what we're emanating in terms of communication, both vocal communication, written communication, body language, etc. Just being in control of all of that, and namely, especially, not talking about others and saying things that you would be embarrassed if they overheard you saying. Gossip, not gossiping. Next is the principle of temperance and the sub-principles of suffering, because we suffer when we are temperate. Simplicity, because a simple life is a temperate life. And apathy, which is the ability to recognize what is outside of our control and to be accept that and not dwell. Pardon me. Not to dwell unduly on those things, or to kick ourselves or the universe for what can't be helped. Shogun ne. Next, after temperance, which if I didn't explain it clearly, is our ability to control our consumption of all things. After temperance comes the horror show. It's just simply the recognition that life is chock full of not just bad stuff, but horrible stuff. Horrible things are happening near you now, near me now. Horrible things are going to happen to each of us. Some things that happen are worse than the worst horror movie ever written. I don't know what to do with that other than to simply lay it there and state that as a fact. That's the purpose of it, because it kind of sets the stage for reconciling that fact. After the horror show comes the principle of that which must be borne. We have to bear the fact that life is full of horrors. We have to bear the fact of the mistakes that we made, make efforts to correct them when we can. But when we can't, we have to bear these things. A sub-principle of that which must be borne is the idea of the hand on the tiller, keeping the rudder straight, climbing the upward path despite the oncoming rain, knowing what that means. I mean, in for a soaking. Next is the best seat in the house. The suggestion that right here, right now, and who I am is just fine. The next principle is the path of wildness. It's a way forward through difficulty, upward, onward, sometimes without all the information that we need to have confidence that our decision was the right one. It's a real sound. I don't know what it is. Never heard it before. There it is again. Next is, after the path of wildness, is the risk of avoiding risk. The surface level risks of life and the deep level risks of life. The recognition that it's tricky to address both. The surface ones being what I might call simpler ones of, education, spouse, home, savings, job, etc., family. And then the deep level risk of life is pursuing the man or woman that we want to be, realizing some dream that we have that may not align with the surface level risks. That's why I say give yourself the decade of your 20s to yourself. Just take that decade and go have some great life adventures, which is coming up. So next is the sin and damnation. There are 7 sins in my worldview. These are credulity, an overeagerness to believe; hope, which is desire without action; faith, which is belief without evidence; superstition, which is believing things which are almost recognized by their very nature as being ridiculous; dogma, believing things because it's written in a book; and tradition, authority, believing something because someone with an air of authority says so. Our consequence of these sins is damnation in the here and now, because we wind up believing and doing things. Oh, I forgot gossip. Gossip is a sin. Believing and doing things that make the world if not a worse place, at least a less real place. Next is complete oblivion. The proposition that when we die, there is no afterlife, and that we won't be meeting Grandma in the next world, and we won't settle our differences with our friend who we died on bad terms with, and that there won't be any justice. That the guy or gal who did bad things during life, is if they don't get theirs during life, they get away with it. Although they're wiped out and they're into oblivion, so if you call that getting away with it, I guess that's not something. That's not much, at least, or nothing. Next principle is great life adventure, like I mentioned a moment ago. One or more really focused events in life that becomes the part of our story and our identity. Next is the season of philosophy, a time to record what we've learned along the way, to get some words down about the visions that we've had, the experiences that we've had, and the lessons that we've learned. My season of philosophy comes as a result of my book, Going Alone. That is the result of all that effort. I could probably wipe my hands at this point and say, my great life adventure and my season of philosophy are done. Doesn't mean I have to give up on a mission. I could carry on the other things too. Anyway, I'm off track. Next is the Bullseye Aim. The idea that we strive and we usually miss the mark by some degree. Sometimes we hit it, but sometimes we get a bullseye, but usually we're off. Then the uphill climb. The idea that we're always, life is a constant struggle upward and onward towards the summit. And with the rain coming on, keep stepping. Next is the arena in utility. Life is this forum for the execution of our days, and these principles are the tools that we use. I have mine. I imagine you have yours. And then nothing is enough. A suggestion that life is sometimes better with less. And then finally, I mentioned it before, the principle of fun. To do things that put a smile on our face. Okay, those are my objectives and principles. Let's talk about the day ahead. Well, as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to get the boys up, the dogs, and I'll put their leashes on. I'll get a jacket. There's that sound again. And we will head out for a walkie. And boys, want to go for a walkie? A little reaction from Rudy, nothing from Ollie. And the sun's out. I slept in a little bit this morning. Fancy that. And then after that, we'll come back, and then we'll read a little bit until Yumiko gets up, or maybe I'll work on my chores downstairs. I might do that. And then we'll have breakfast, or maybe we'll go out for breakfast. We'll see. And then don't really have a plan. I don't feel anxious about it though. Just kind of maybe take the day free form. We'll see. Funny how I felt anxious about no plan yesterday, but I don't feel anxious about it this morning. Wonder why. Oh well. Have a good day. Be safe, but not too safe.